Ethan Ward stood alone in the secure room, hidden behind a secret passage in the Holmby Hills mansion. Before him was a cold, bright LED wall divided into 6 frames, each showing a different angle of the sprawling 8,000-plus square foot estate. The nursery, the living room, the kitchen, the upstairs hallway, the backyard, and the foyer. On the main screen, the 3 small cribs in the nursery were clearly visible, soft yellow light falling on the pastel blankets embroidered with the names. Aiden, Liam, Noah. A sharp, grating cry, like a blunt knife stabbing into Ethan's chest, pierced through the surveillance room speaker. He closed his eyes for a second, then opened them. The 3-month-old babies, the children he had adopted 6 weeks ago, were crying, faces red, tiny arms and legs flailing, each sob catching in their small throats. In the room, there was no one. Ethan clenched his fists, his knuckles white from the force. Anger surged, then was immediately suppressed by something deeper: fear. Fear that he had made a mistake. Fear that he was not capable of protecting these 3 tiny lives. He had been suspicious for weeks. Small, but distinct changes, like fragments of sharp glass. Vanessa, his girlfriend, always played the role of the perfect mother when guests were present, holding the babies with a radiant smile, kissing each of their foreheads, speaking words full of maternal affection. But when the guests left, when the phone camera was off, when social media went silent, her eyes changed. Colder, thinner, and a haunting impatience began to show. No one would believe it because, in public, Vanessa Brooks was always hailed as the fashion world's American sweetheart. But Ethan had seen it. He saw the fleeting moments, the soft complaints. The 3 of them cry constantly, "Something is wrong with Aiden. Liam is too clingy. I don't know why Noah can't sleep by himself." Or the phrase that chilled Ethan to the bone: "A single man adopting triplets." It sounds touching, but the reality is exhausting. Before, he tried to rationalize it, but when she started avoiding the children, pulling her hand away when Aiden reached out to grasp it, Ethan felt something inside his heart crack. And that was why, this morning, he had done something he never thought he would do: installing hidden cameras in his own home. He hated the feeling of betrayal, but what he feared more was being mistaken, because the 3 babies couldn't defend themselves. Ethan looked at the screen again. Aiden was the first to cry. The whimpering escalated into sobs. Liam and Noah were awakened, and the cries of the 3 babies merged, chaotic, desperate. And then Vanessa stepped into the frame. Suddenly, gone was the image the world saw on Instagram. No perfect smile, no gently curled hair falling over her shoulders. She stood at the nursery door, arms crossed, her expression rigid as if forced to be present in this place. She let out a long sigh. "Oh my God," crying again. These 3 cry like they're torturing someone. Ethan felt his stomach twist. Vanessa walked closer. She didn't pick up any of them, didn't bend down, didn't touch. She used 2 fingers to check each diaper as if inspecting inventory in a supermarket. Dry, not hungry. "So what are you crying about?" Aiden cried louder, his tiny hand reaching out for comfort. Vanessa took half a step back. "God, I can't stand this sound." She turned, slamming the door shut. The screen slightly shook. The crying still echoed, choked, as if Ethan were standing right in that room. He lowered his head, hands bracing on the control panel. A feeling of defeat washed over him, and then a name flashed in his mind like lightning: Grace. Grace Coleman, the new housekeeper, who had started 10 days ago, a single mother raising her daughter Emma. From day one, she had made Ethan feel confident. From the carefulness in every gesture, her calloused yet strangely gentle hands, to the way her eyes lit up when looking at the triplets, as if they were something sacred. Grace wasn't home this morning. Ethan had given her the day off, and that was what made him realize this was the perfect time to verify everything. But he never expected the truth to be revealed so quickly. The screen flickered, the front door opened. Ethan leaned forward. Grace rushed into the house, hair hastily tied up, face full of worry, as if some premonition had urged her to arrive earlier than her shift. She called out softly, "Vanessa? Ethan?" No one answered. Hearing the crying, her eyes immediately changed color. Grace rushed straight upstairs, without a second of hesitation. Ethan swallowed hard. The nursery frame switched views. Grace appeared at the door. In just a moment, her expression turned to horror. "Oh my God! Aiden, Noah, Liam." She didn't ask anything. No complaints. Not a single heavy breath. Grace picked up Aiden first, hugging him tightly, rocking him gently, her voice dropping to a soft whisper. "Auntie Grace is here. It's okay, little one." Aiden stopped crying after just a few seconds, as if he had found the person he needed. Ethan felt his eyes sting. Grace offered a pacifier to Liam, her other hand gently stroking Noah's back. She continued to whisper, changing her tone 3 times, like a real mother soothing her 3 children. Ethan put a hand over his mouth, his heart feeling like it was exploding in his chest. The contrast between Grace and Vanessa was agonizingly cruel. Outside, the whole world might praise Vanessa through flawless, shimmering photos. But in this small room, where the camera recorded the undeniable truth, there was only one woman who truly knew how to love: Grace. And Ethan understood. This was only the beginning. Grace bent down to Noah's crib, her hand trembling slightly with sorrow as she touched the flushed face of the youngest triplet. His skin was hot, his soaked eyes wide open as if pleading for help. She picked Noah up, pressed him against her shoulder, and rocked him gently. "You're shivering?" I know, she whispered, her voice choked. Liam was still crying faintly, a sound like an incessant, repeating apology. Grace reached out to stroke the fine, soft hair on the boy's head, her heart twisting when she saw the remaining streak of tears in the corner of his eye. Ethan stood in the surveillance room, his hands clasped together, his jaw clenched. He had thought he was prepared, but the sight of Grace kneeling on the floor, holding the 3 children as if they were the whole world, it struck him harder than any shock. Where was Vanessa now? Where was she when his children were crying until their throats were hoarse? Where was she when the triplets thrashed around, hungry and afraid? Ethan's eyes were glued to the screen. Grace placed Noah in a baby bouncer, then gently picked up Liam. She quickly checked all 3 diapers, then looked around the room as if searching for vital information. The mini fridge next to the crib lit up when she opened it. 3 cold bottles of milk sat there, untouched. Grace frowned. That expression made Ethan feel like someone was stabbing him in the chest. "Vanessa does that with infant formula," he muttered, quiet enough only for himself to hear. Grace said nothing, but the camera recorded her every movement. She picked up a bottle, touching it with her wrist to check the temperature. Her face changed color instantly. Ice cold. Grace froze for a second in outrage, but then immediately acted. She placed Liam in the bouncer next to Noah and ran downstairs to the kitchen. In the surveillance room, Ethan followed her frantic steps across 3 different camera angles. It was as if he was running with her, breathing in sync with her breath. Grace boiled water, dipping the bottles in to warm them as quickly as possible, all while turning her head to hear the heart-stabbing cries echoing down from upstairs. It's okay. I'm coming right now," she repeated like a prayer. Ethan couldn't recall the last time he had heard a woman speak to children in such a soft voice. When the milk was warm enough, Grace ran back to the nursery, kneeling on the floor instead of sitting on the comfortable sofa because she wanted to be at eye level with the children. She offered the bottle to Noah first. The boy immediately nursed fiercely as if he had never eaten before. "Mommy is sorry. I was so bad today," Grace whispered. Though she wasn't their biological mother, the way she spoke made Ethan choke up. Liam, seeing the bottle, cried softer, his tiny hands reaching out. Grace switched hands, offering the second bottle to Liam. Aiden was the most active, though still crying. His eyes brightened when he saw Grace turn towards him. "Just a minute, Aiden. I know you've waited the longest." "I know." She quickly kissed his forehead before running to get the 3rd bottle. Ethan couldn't stand still. He braced his hands on the desk, bending forward as if his heart was about to break from guilt. He had let this happen. He had let his children cry for hours. And Vanessa, what was Vanessa doing? He switched the camera to the living room. She was sitting on the sofa, feet propped up on the table, a phone in one hand, a latte in the other. Her AirPods were deep in her ears, music playing loud, completely oblivious to the heart-wrenching cries echoing from upstairs. She was laughing with someone on FaceTime. Ethan saw her tilt her head, her curls perfect, her smile picture perfect, all of it a beautiful mask. Ethan slammed his hand on the control panel. The camera didn't lie, but people did. It took Grace almost an hour to calm all three children, feeding them, changing their diapers, wiping away their tears, talking to them, hugging them, rubbing her cheek against theirs, soothing them. The scene made the small room transform into another world, a world filled with human warmth. When all three were fast asleep, Grace didn't stand up and leave. She sat right on the floor, her back against the cabinet, her hands clasped together, letting out a long sigh. Then she did something that choked Ethan up. She took a small photograph from her pocket, a picture of two teenage girls, shoulder to shoulder, smiling in the sunlight. One of them was Grace. The other, Ethan recognized instantly. Hannah Pierce, the biological mother of Aiden, Liam, and Noah. Ethan's chest suddenly tightened. Grace placed her hand on the photo and whispered, "Hannah, I'm keeping my promise. I'm here with your children. I promised you, didn't I?" Her voice cracked, yet remained gentle. Ethan stepped back from the screen as if someone had punched him in the gut. Grace wasn't just a housekeeper. She wasn't just a good person. She was someone who carried a vow to the children's biological mother, a promise she was fulfilling every hour, every minute. While Vanessa, he glanced at the screen in the right corner. Vanessa had just ended the FaceTime call, sighing because she had slightly chipped a fingernail. Grace stood up quietly, dusted off her pants, adjusted the blankets for the three babies, and placed her hand on each child's chest as if touching a treasure. Then she spoke softly, "I'm always here. I will always protect you." Ethan stood silent. There are words that bring about an awakening, and Grace's words were one of them. The surveillance room was so quiet that Ethan could clearly hear the heavy, chaotic rhythm of his own heartbeat. In front of him, the divided screen displayed three separate worlds. Grace's world, full of warmth, devotion, and unconditional love. The baby's world, fragile, dependent, in need of a large, protective hand. And Vanessa's world, cold, emotionless to the point of being chilling. These three worlds existed within the same house, his home. And none of those worlds were fit for the children to live in, except for the one Grace was guarding with her heart. Ethan raised a hand to lightly press his eyes, trying to suppress the overwhelming surge of guilt. He had once thought he could balance running his company, raising three newborns, and maintaining a romantic relationship. A seemingly feasible equation had now become an undeniable mistake. He switched the camera angle to the living room. Vanessa had just stood up, walked into the kitchen, and opened the refrigerator. Not a single glance towards the stairs. Not a single question about why the crying had stopped. Just a small sigh of relief, as if a headache had just been soothed. "Finally quiet," she mumbled. Ethan clenched the fist resting on the desk. His veins stood out, but he held himself back from erupting. Not now. Not when he needed more proof. He needed a truth sharp enough to never make him doubt his own decision. He turned on the surveillance microphone. Vanessa opened a bottle of mineral water, took a sip, then examined herself in the stainless steel cabinet door, as if checking a selfie. "Those damn babies," she enunciated. "I wasn't born to be a babysitter." Each word fell into Ethan's ears like a drop onto a metal floor, cold and heavy. In the nursery, Grace had just pulled the blanket up for Noah. She sat down on the floor next to the three cribs. No chair, no backrest. She sat like a mother watching over her children's sleep, ready to jump up at the slightest whimper. The camera captured the moment, the beauty of a quiet and genuine love. Grace whispered, "You're so good. Aiden, Liam, Noah, my three little brothers." Her voice was as thin as a breath. "I promised your mother." She touched the photo again, then carefully tucked it back in her shirt pocket. The camera recorded her every small movement, each light, cherished touch. It wasn't just a photograph. It was a vow, a bridge connecting the past to the present. Ethan leaned his head back against the chair, the whole room seeming to sway. Grace knew Hannah, the baby's biological mother. She was the person Hannah trusted, the person entrusted, the only one keeping her word. And he, the legal father, had unwittingly welcomed danger into their home. The living room camera lit up. Vanessa answered her phone. "Hey, Sierra, listen, I'm going crazy in this house." Her voice was sickly sweet, completely different from the earlier annoyance when she spoke to herself. Ethan turned up the volume. "I'm looking after the triplets," she said. "Looking after? Just a fancy word for it." Sierra chuckled over the phone. "So, did Ethan leave you with the burden?" Vanessa rolled her eyes, pouting. "Yeah. I thought being a CEO's girlfriend meant resorts, spas, and shopping. Turns out, it means moving in with a newborn zoo." Ethan sat silently. Something tightened inside him. Vanessa lowered her voice, but the microphone still captured every word. "I just want Ethan to realize adopting triplets was a mistake. He's a good guy, but he's blind. I just need to help him see that." Ethan felt his throat tighten painfully. It wasn't just that she didn't love the children. She wanted him to give them up with his own hands. Sierra asked, "What are you planning to do?" Vanessa gave a light laugh, a little pressure, a few fake exhaustion spells, a few whispers that he should find a specialist. Men are easily swayed by guilt, you know. Ethan slumped in his chair, holding his head in his hands. She was manipulating him, targeting his deepest vulnerability, the fear that he wasn't a good enough father. In the nursery, Grace was pulling the blanket up for Aiden again, unaware that downstairs, a conversation was taking place that aimed to destroy everything she was trying to preserve. Ethan looked at Grace's camera screen. She bent down, gently kissing Aiden's forehead. Wordless, unaffected, only love, the kind that cannot be faked. He switched to Vanessa's screen. She was holding a nail file, sighing. "I swear, if Ethan plans to keep these 3 long-term, I'm leaving. Who can stand this?" A moment of silence. Then the final sentence that sent a chill through Ethan's entire body. "It's okay. If he doesn't figure out himself, I'll help him figure it out." Ethan shot up from his chair. His breathing was ragged, as if he were about to scream. His chest burned like fire. Now, there was no more doubt, no more vague intuition. The truth was alive, right inside his own house. Vanessa didn't love him. She didn't love the children. She loved no one but herself. And Grace was rocking the babies to sleep, unaware that her gentleness was saving a family. Ethan placed his hand on the control panel, his hand trembling slightly. He knew what he had to do next. The camera didn't lie, and the truth now was as sharp as a knife. Ethan couldn't sleep. All night long, he sat motionless in the surveillance room, his eyes glued to the screens. The images from the previous day replayed over and over like a stuck film reel. Vanessa's indifference, her harsh words like knife stabs. Grace rushing into the nursery, holding each baby to her chest, caring for them with her whole soul. The photo of Hannah, the whispered promise in the darkness. By the time the first light filtered through the cracks of the door, Ethan had made his decision. He needed more. He couldn't confront Vanessa with just one day of hidden footage. He needed clear evidence. He needed to see how she would behave when she believed he was gone for 3 entire days. A plan formed, clear and cold. The next morning, Ethan walked into the kitchen. Vanessa was sipping celery juice, as usual. The 3 cribs were right next to the dining table. She didn't look at them once. Grace had already taken the children to their private room early in the morning. "Honey," Ethan said, trying to keep his voice completely calm. "I have to fly to New York for 3 days. An urgent meeting." Vanessa's face visibly brightened, like a light switch being flipped, but only for less than a second. She quickly shifted back to her gentle, fabricated expression. 3 days? Are you sure? I'll try to manage here." Ethan scrutinized her every expression. He saw through the mask, and he saw the budding relief. If it weren't for the camera footage, he might have missed the momentary flicker of disappointment when he mentioned Grace. "Grace will work extra hours. She'll sleep over in the staff room, Ethan said, his eyes never leaving her. Oh, that's good then. Vanessa forced a smile. Her confidence dropped a notch. Grace walked in, her hands still drying, and offered a slight bow. Good morning, Mr. Ward. Ethan looked at her longer than usual. In Grace's eyes was respect, and something else, unconditional trust. Something Ethan hadn't realized how much he had been missing. He wanted to say something, thank you, sorry, or simply, I know. But with Vanessa standing there, he only nodded lightly. 10 a.m. A suitcase, car keys, a quick goodbye. Ethan drove out the gate. But instead of heading to the airport as Vanessa thought, he turned onto a nearby street, parked his car in the lot of an abandoned building, then crossed a back alley to return to the mansion via his service entrance. He went straight into the surveillance room, locked the door, wrote on the whiteboard, Day 1, tracking begins. Now, no one in the world knew he was here, except for Ethan and the cameras. Vanessa's bedroom camera appeared, 10:35 a.m. She opened the closet, pulling out a short dress and beige high heels. Standing in front of the mirror, she adjusted her hair and reapplied her lipstick. The FaceTime ringtone sounded. Laura, listen, Ethan flew out. 3 days of freedom. Ethan clenched his hand into a fist. What about the babies? Laura asked. Vanessa laughed, as if the question were a joke. Grace is here. She handles everything. I wasn't born to be stuck with 3 diapered babies all day. So what are you going to do? Hit the bar tonight. I need a soul detox. Ethan slumped into the chair. That sentence was like a cold wind, chilling his heart. How long would 3 newborn babies be neglected if Grace weren't here? 11:10 a.m. Vanessa entered the nursery. She checked the 3 babies' diapers with one hand, tossing the milk bottles into the cribs like throwing food to pets. Here's your milk. Mommy's going out. Don't bother Mommy. Ethan bent forward, his fists tightly clenched. Each word from the mouth of the woman he once loved became claws tearing at his heart. Never. He would never forgive this. 12:03 p.m. Vanessa left the house. The door slammed shut, the echo dry and hollow. A cruel silence filled the space. The nursery camera lit up. Aiden stirred. Liam woke up next. Noah frowned, then a small sob escaped. Then the crying began. From a whimper to sobs, then screams. 3 babies, 3 months old, left alone in the spacious room. No one, no warmth, no soothing sound. Ethan tensed his body, every muscle tight as a wire. He mustn't interfere. Not now. He needed the whole truth. Not a second missing, but his heart felt crushed with every beat. 2 p.m. The crying had lasted for 2 full hours. Ethan gasped, feeling as if he were suffocating. He took half a step toward the door, but stopped. No, not yet, he whispered to himself, his voice hoarse. He turned back to the screen. Aiden's face was bright red, his eyes puffy. Noah was exhausted, only able to manage intermittent sobs. Liam kicked his legs as if searching for a non-existent hand. There was no one, only the camera recording the malicious silence. Ethan bowed his head, clutching his chest. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. My children. Pain clawed at his chest. And then, the door burst open. Grace rushed in like a storm. Not the composure of someone arriving for a shift, but the image of a mother, someone who heard her child's cry from afar and dropped everything to rush back. Oh, God, she gasped, hearing the crying echo down from upstairs. Her purse was tossed aside. She ran up the stairs, almost without touching the ground. Ethan jumped up, his eyes fixed on the screen. The nursery camera flickered to life. Grace appeared at the door. Her face was pale, breathing heavily, eyes wide. No, how long has it been? A choked question, a mix of pain, anger, and self-reproach. Ethan felt his heart ache more than ever before. Grace picked up Aiden first, then Liam, then Noah. Her eyes were filled with profound sorrow. I'm here. Don't cry anymore. You were such good babies. Ethan tightly gripped the fabric over his chest, as if afraid his heart would shatter right then. The first day of the 3-day trial had become a nightmare, and he knew this nightmare was only just beginning. Grace carried Aiden in her arms, stepping lightly toward the bouncer to put him down. But Aiden clung tightly to her shirt, as if letting go would make the world collapse again. She trembled slightly, hugging the baby closer to her chest, her heart beating erratically in sync with the child's broken breaths. "I'm here. I'm sorry I was late. I'm so very sorry." Her apology was so soft it seemed to dissolve into the air. Ethan stood motionless in the surveillance room, a feeling of suffocation running through his chest. He had witnessed hundreds of meetings, thousands of decisions, and millions of figures, but he had never seen anything that made him feel so weak in a single second as the scene before him. A woman with no biological ties, yet suffering for the 3 children as if they were her own. Grace turned to Liam and Noah, whose cries were gradually fading into choked sobs. She bent down, gently kissed Liam's forehead, then placed her hand on Noah's chest so he could feel the warmth. Her gestures held something almost sacred, primal, instinctive, and full of love. Ethan leaned towards the screen, his breathing halted. Grace opened her bag, took out a warm cloth, a water bottle, then pulled something from the bottom of the bag that froze Ethan. The photograph. It was that photo again. 2 young girls, shoulder to shoulder, smiling brightly in the sunlight. One was Grace, young, radiant. The other, Hannah Pierce, the deceased biological mother of the triplets. Grace placed the photo on the table next to the cribs, then sat down on the floor. No chair, no support, just the floor and the 3 babies. She held Noah in her arms, her other hand stroking Aiden's back, her foot gently rocking Liam in the bouncer. And then, a voice so low that only the camera could catch it, but Ethan heard every word as an echo in his chest. "Hannah, I'm sorry. I didn't make it in time this morning. I failed, but I'm here, just like I promised." Ethan took a step back. "Promised? Promise what? To whom? Why?" Grace continued, her voice trembling but firm. "I promised to protect them. I promised not to let anyone hurt them. I promised you, Hannah, that I would care for them as my own children, even though all I have are these 2 hands." Ethan gripped the edge of the control panel, his fingers shaking. Grace bowed her head, tears falling onto Noah's fine hair. "I'm trying my best. I really am. But sometimes, I'm afraid it's not enough. I'm just a single mother. I don't have the power to go against the rich, the powerful. But I won't give up. Never." Ethan gasped, as if someone had squeezed the breath out of him. "God, Grace," he whispered, sounding like a silent roar within his heart. Grace touched Hannah's photo, pulling it close to her heart. "I miss you. And I remember how you smiled when you felt your baby's kick inside you. I remember how you cried that night and said you didn't have the strength to raise 3 babies. Ethan sank onto the chair, his heart constricted as if being crushed. He was hearing a story he had never known, the story he should have known since the first day he adopted the babies. Grace lifted her head, looking at the triplets as if they were pieces of her best friend's soul. "You trusted me, and I promise, I won't let you down." Noah turned his head, seeking warmth. Liam stopped sobbing. Aiden relaxed his tiny hands as if recognizing who was holding him. Grace whispered, "Mommy Hannah loved you very much, but she was sick. She was weak. She couldn't. So she chose someone to take her place. That's me." Ethan swallowed the bitter lump in his throat. He didn't know what Hannah had left in the adoption file, besides a brief letter asking for a better chance for the 3 babies. He didn't know she had a best friend, a confidant, someone to trust. But it turned out, Hannah had Grace. And Grace had kept her promise for the past 3 months in silence, without seeking any credit. Ethan stood up, moving closer to the screen, as if wanting to touch the image. Grace pressed the photo to her forehead, closing her eyes. "Rest assured, I will protect them, even if you're no longer here." Ethan pounded his chest as if to hold together his heart, which was shattering into pieces. The doorbell rang from the living room. Grace flinched. She put Noah down, quickly wiped her tears, hugged all 3 babies again to reassure them, and ran downstairs. The screen switched views. The living room camera recorded the moment Vanessa walked in, stumbling, her eyes red from alcohol, her hair messy, giggling as she hung up the phone. Gosh, that bar, it was absolutely amazing. Grace stood in the middle of the room, suppressing her astonishment. Vanessa, the babies have been crying for hours. They are hungry, exhausted, and the milk in the bottles is ice cold. Vanessa interrupted with a sarcastic laugh. Oh my God, Grace, you are so serious. So what if babies cry? They are babies. They are only 3 months old. Grace replied, her voice shaky but unyielding. They can't feed themselves. They can't put themselves to sleep. They need someone here. Vanessa raised her eyebrows, her eyes shooting contempt. You're not their mother, and you're not mine. Don't lecture me. Grace clenched her fists, trying to keep Emma in her mind to stop herself from breaking down. But I promised their biological mother. Vanessa burst into loud laughter. Biological mother? You know her? Were you? Some kind of baby-saving saint? Sorry, but you're just a housekeeper trying to make yourself important. The phrase landed like a slap, but Grace didn't answer. She only stepped back, shielding her trembling heart in her chest. Ethan, in the surveillance room, whispered, Vanessa, you just made your biggest mistake. Grace turned, heading back toward the stairs to return to the babies. But before disappearing from the frame, she whispered a sentence that sent shivers down Ethan's spine. Mommy Hannah, I don't know how, but I won't let them harm your children. The camera captured it all. Every word, every quiver in her voice, every genuine, unfeigned pain. Ethan placed his hand on the screen. He knew what he had to do next. And he knew Grace Coleman was no longer just a housekeeper. She was the lifeline of the 3 children. Grace returned to the nursery, her legs trembling so much that she had to lean on the doorframe for a few seconds to steady herself. On the floor, the 3 babies were still lightly sobbing, their cheeks flushed from crying for too long. Just looking at them made Grace's throat seize up again. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. She sat down on the floor, pulling the 3 cribs closer together. With each baby, she placed a hand on their chest, letting them feel her steady breathing. Ethan watched from the surveillance room, his hands gripping the edge of the desk. He wanted to burst out of the room immediately to hold the 3 little ones and to do something definitive about Vanessa. But he couldn't appear too soon. If he intervened now, the plan would collapse. He had to wait longer. He had to let Vanessa fully expose her true nature. But deep down, Ethan knew every passing minute felt like torture. Grace looked at the 3 children, then swallowed the deepest pain as she recalled the events of a few minutes ago. Vanessa didn't just neglect them. She laughed in the face of a sacred promise, the promise between Grace and Hannah. In that room, with the soft light and the baby's faint breaths, Grace whispered, Emma, Mommy is trying. I know I'm not good enough, but I'm trying every day. Ethan leaned his head back against the chair. Emma, Grace's daughter, the baby she was raising alone, working 3 jobs just to afford rent, yet still having the strength to love 3 more lives that were not her own flesh and blood. He had never seen such beautiful strength. He had never seen such a resilient heart. 5:40 p.m. Grace tidied the nursery, prepared new bottles, warmed the water, and checked the temperature of each bottle on her wrist. She did everything quickly, precisely, but her eyes were still moist. Outside, music blared from the living room. Vanessa had turned on the Bluetooth speaker, swaying drunkenly and tiredly. Ethan looked at the screen, the fire in his eyes burning red like heated metal. Vanessa stumbled around the living room, holding a 3rd glass of wine. She opened her phone and FaceTimed Laura. Laura, I had a surprise today. Grace stormed in like she was the baby's mother. LOL. It was ridiculous. Laura asked something on the other end of the line. Vanessa laughed loudly. The babies? Honestly, if Ethan would listen to me, they should be back in the orphanage already. I like Ethan, but all 3 of them, oh my God. I'm not a babysitter. Ethan slammed his fist onto the desk. The sound echoed in the small room, but Vanessa couldn't hear it. Vanessa continued. Actually, I have a new plan. Next week, I'm going to host a dinner with Ethan's family. I'm going to make everyone see how overwhelmed he is. I'll get everyone to push Ethan to return the babies. Ethan jumped to his feet, his breath ragged. Grace was somewhere downstairs, diligently preparing dinner for four. Herself, the three babies, and Vanessa, who always treated her like a servant. And here, Vanessa was planning the destruction of his family. Vanessa lowered her voice, tilting her wine glass. After the babies are gone, I'll marry him. A year later, I'll file for divorce. Half the assets. Simple as grade school math. That sentence made Ethan want to open the door and end everything immediately. But he had to restrain himself. He needed it all to be exposed. He needed every word to be recorded intact by the camera. 6:15 p.m. Grace left the nursery to go down to the kitchen to check the porridge and clean up. Ethan observed through the screen. He saw how she maneuvered the tableware with one hand, the other rocking Noah's bouncer. He saw how she opened the microwave door with her elbow because she had to hold Aiden. He saw how she checked the porridge temperature 3 times, not a millimeter of error. He heard Grace softly singing to Liam when he cried from being hungry earlier than his 2 brothers. Mommy Hannah would be so proud of you. I know she would. Vanessa entered the kitchen from the living room, her heels clicking on the wooden floor like a deliberate warning. Grace, I want pizza. Order it now. Grace blinked tiredly. I'm preparing the baby's food. My priority comes before those 3 children. Vanessa cut in, leaning on the kitchen island. Your job title here is house service, isn't it? My job description is actually childcare, Grace replied, her voice soft but her back straight. Vanessa's voice rose, sharp, and I just said I want pizza, or you're fired. Ethan felt an electric current run down his spine. God witness, he would make Vanessa pay for every word. Grace put the bottle down, her hands slightly shaking. Okay, I'll place the order. Vanessa smiled triumphantly, turning and walking away. When the kitchen door closed, Grace put her hand on her forehead. Why did she want to keep this job anyway? Money? No. She had worked 3 jobs before and managed to live. She kept this job because of the promise, because of the 3 children, because of Hannah. Grace quickly ordered the pizza, then reached for a cloth to wipe her wet hands. But she didn't realize when her tears had fallen onto the cloth. 7:02 p.m. Ethan monitored all 3 cameras simultaneously. Kitchen camera, Grace mixing porridge, reheating bottles, portioning the food. Living room camera, Vanessa sprawled on the sofa, scrolling through Instagram, randomly hearting posts. Nursery camera, the 3 babies kicking their feet, looking up into the void, lightly sobbing in rhythm. And Ethan realized one thing. This house, thousands of square feet, luxurious, expensive, but nothing in it was as warm as Grace sitting on the floor, holding a plastic spoon and feeding Noah every drop of porridge, her hand shaking slightly from fatigue. Nothing was more precious than the way she soothed the 3 children while fighting the whole world. Ethan took a deep breath, deciding, just one more day. He would let Vanessa weave the noose tighter around herself. Then he would pull hard. And when that happened, Grace would never have to apologize again, never have to fear losing her job again, never have to bow down to a wicked person again. Ethan looked at the screen, his eyes blazing with a resolve he'd never had before. Grace, I promise you, I will fix everything, with everything I have. Ethan went almost sleepless for the second night. He sat alone in the cold surveillance room, the blue light from the 6 screens illuminating his haggard face. Every cry from the 3 babies, every frown from Grace, every sneer from Vanessa lodged in his chest like sharp needles. Ethan opened the adoption file he had left on the desk for months, the adoption papers. A photo of Hannah holding her pregnant belly, her eyes full of worry but forcing a smile. He touched a finger to the image of that woman. Hannah, I promise you, today is the day it all ends. In the nursery, the camera showed Grace asleep on the floor, leaning against the bouncer. Her head was tilted, her hair disheveled, her hands still resting on 2 of the cribs as if she dared not move for a moment. She wasn't sleeping. She had collapsed from exhaustion. Ethan's heart clenched. Grace had no reason to be exhausted for the 3 babies. She only had one reason: love. He continued to watch. 7:03 a.m. Vanessa woke up feeling worse than her hangover. She stumbled out of the bedroom, her eyes dull, her breath still smelling of alcohol from the night before. The camera followed her to the nursery. Vanessa opened the door without knocking, her voice hoarse and annoyed. Grace. Grace. I want breakfast. Grace woke up with a start. She looked around, her chest heaving with panic, then rushed to her feet, nearly falling as her legs were numb from sitting for hours. I'm sorry. I'll do it right away. Vanessa rolled her eyes, took off her sunglasses, and glanced at the babies sleeping peacefully. At least you managed to keep them quiet. Grace clenched her hands, suppressing the urge to speak. They just need to be held and fed on time, Vanessa. They're very small. Vanessa let out a dry laugh. You always play the role of the virtuous mother. I swear, Grace, if I didn't know you were single, I would think you were acting to trap a man. Grace froze. Ethan nearly bolted from his chair. Vanessa looked in the mirror, adjusted her hair, then spoke venomously. Anyway, Ethan is coming home tomorrow night. I need everything to be perfect. I want him to see that I am the woman who can manage this house. Grace asked softly, You want him to see you love the 3 babies? Vanessa spun around. I want him to see me, not those 3 red lumps of flesh. And certainly not you. Grace bowed her head, not out of fear, but out of respect for the job she had to keep until the very end. But Vanessa wasn't finished. You know what? When Ethan returns, I'm going to tell him straight. It's either me or the 3 children. And you know what? No man chooses children over a woman like me. The camera clearly recorded every word. Ethan clenched his fists so tightly that his nails dug deep into his skin. 9:15 a.m. Grace was changing Noah's diaper when she heard a loud slam downstairs. Vanessa was leaving the house. Grace, watch everything. I go get manicure and shopping. I want everything to be clean like a 5-star hotel when I return. Grace replied, Vanessa, no one will supervise the babies for those 4 hours. That is not your concern. The door slammed shut. Baby Liam started crying from the loud noise. Grace hugged him, tears falling onto his soft head. Ethan watched the scene, trembling. He wanted to end it now. He wanted to break down the door. He wanted to drag Vanessa out of the house with his own hands. But he had to wait. Wait for the right moment. 10:04 a.m. Grace quickly called Emma, her 6-year-old daughter. My darling, Mommy is a bit busy with the little ones today. Have had breakfast? Emma's voice sounded small but cheerful on the phone. Yes. I miss you. Please don't come home yet. I'll be good so you can work. Grace gave a light laugh, despite the lump in her throat. Thank you. I love you so much. Ethan closed his eyes. She was saving his children while raising her own. Only a woman like that could stand firm between 2 worlds without collapsing. 11:20 a.m. Grace tidied the nursery, washed clothes, warmed milk, and hung up towels. She worked like a shadow in the house. No one saw her, but everything relied on her. Ethan followed her every movement. When she unconsciously took Hannah's photo and placed it next to the crib, he watched mesmerized. A friend, a promise, a single heart caring for 4 children simultaneously, Emma and the 3 triplets. He once thought he was strong, but clearly, Grace was stronger. 1:50 p.m. The door burst open. Vanessa walked in, shopping bags in hand, her high heels clicking on the floor like hammer blows. I'm exhausted, she sighed. Shopping is a real workout. Grace stepped out from the kitchen. The babies have been asleep for 40 minutes. They will wake up soon to eat. Grace! Vanessa waved her hand. I don't care. Put away my shopping bags. Grace felt her eyes sting with fatigue, but she still complied. 4:05 p.m. A scream echoed from the nursery. Vanessa! The camera instantly focused. Vanessa stood in the middle of the room, her face contorted with anger. They soiled their diapers again. Grace! Grace ran in. They're small. That's normal. Normal? What's normal? I'm not cleaning these things. Grace took a deep breath. Vanessa, you could be gentler. You shut up. You shut up. I don't know why Ethan hired someone like you. You look so poor. So cheap. Grace bit her lip hard, her hands trembling violently. Vanessa continued, her voice low but sharp as a knife. Listen to me, Grace. After next week's dinner, Ethan will choose me. And you? You will be left with nothing. You will be kicked out of his life and the lives of these children. Who are you to claim them? A lost single mother? Someone living on pity? Ethan lunged toward the camera, his hands clenched into fists, his eyes bloodshot. Vanessa moved close to Grace, speaking softly, forcing the camera to increase its gain. No matter how much you love them, you're only a substitute. You're not their mother. Grace held her breath. Her eyes were red, but not a single tear fell. Her voice cracked slightly. Vanessa, you understand nothing about love. Vanessa laughed. Love doesn't buy a house. Love doesn't grant custody rights. Love is nothing. Grace looked directly at Vanessa, unafraid for the first time, but it raises a human being. That line silenced Vanessa. 1 second, 2 seconds. Then she narrowed her eyes, full of malice. You will regret this. The door slammed hard, shaking the camera. Ethan stood up. Enough. It was time. Tomorrow night, Vanessa would have her true face exposed before everyone. And Grace would stand where she... The mansion was eerily quiet, silent to the point that every small tick of the heating system sounded like a countdown clock. But it was not peace. It was the stillness before a storm erupted. In the surveillance room, Ethan stood motionless, hands braced on the control panel, eyes glued to the 6 screens that silently told a devastating story. On the living room screen, Vanessa sat cross-legged on the sofa, arranging a pile of new dresses and giggling, holding her phone on a video call with someone. Karen, listen. Ethan is going to announce something tomorrow night, and I'm willing to bet it's a proposal. Finally, the day I become a millionaire's wife has arrived. Karen's voice came from the other end. What about the 3 children? Vanessa shrugged. Her voice is indifferent, as if speaking about some old belongings. They are not the problem. I'll tell him straight that he's overwhelmed. With a few people agreeing, he'll certainly cave. Single men, you just need to know their weak spot. Ethan ground his jaw. Veins pulsed on his neck. Vanessa continued, her voice light, yet chilling. And when the 3 rugrats are sent back to the orphanage, I'll be the only one by his side. Everything will fall into place. That sentence hit Ethan like a punch to the chest. Not an ounce of love. Not even pity. Only a cold-blooded calculation. 7:40 p.m. Grace sat on the nursery floor, gently patting Noah's back as he stirred in the crib. She did not know that Vanessa was planning to eliminate her. Nor did she know that Ethan had heard everything. To Grace, only one thing was true. These 3 babies needed her. When Noah settled, she leaned her back against the edge of the crib, sighed, and pulled out her phone to check the time. Emma, her 6-year-old daughter, was sleeping over at a neighbor's house. Grace no longer dared to bring her daughter into this house. Vanessa had become too frightening. She spoke softly, her voice choked. Emma, forgive Mommy. I'll be home with you soon. Her eyelids drooped slightly, her gaze heavy. She didn't know when Ethan would return. She certainly didn't know if she would be allowed to stay here another day. But at least, she had kept her promise to Hannah. 8:03 p.m. The nursery door burst open abruptly. Grace, down to the kitchen. I want detox water. Vanessa's voice was as cold as a blade. Grace glanced at the 3 sleeping babies, hesitating. Vanessa, I just settled Noah. Let me. Grace, Vanessa interrupted, tilting her head, a half-smile playing on her lips. You are the help. From the surveillance room, Ethan closed his eyes as if he couldn't bear another scene. He saw Grace biting her lip, silent. She stood up, adjusted the baby's blankets, and left the room. Each step was burdened by her heavy heart. Behind her, Vanessa leaned over and looked at Liam stirring, then mumbled, At least you guys know how to shut up for a few hours. The camera recorded every word. Ethan jumped up, his chest heaving. 8:12 p.m. The kitchen. Grace poured the detox water into a glass, her hands shaking slightly. Vanessa sat perched on the kitchen counter, holding up her phone to take a picture of Grace as if she owned a piece of decor. Turn this way, Grace. Stand up straight. Grace froze. Vanessa, I'm uncomfortable. Come on, I'm just posting a story. Loyal nanny handles everything. Grace tightened her grip around the glass. I am a housekeeper. Vanessa burst into laughter. Grace, who cares? You're attached to the kids more than Ethan is. It's not wrong for outsiders to think you're the nanny. The comment felt like a cut to Grace's heart. She didn't want Emma to see her mother as merely someone being ordered around in a house that wasn't theirs. But she remained silent. For the 3 babies. For the promise. Remember to wear something decent tomorrow, Vanessa added dismissively. Don't embarrass my family. Grace asked softly, Your family? Vanessa looked up, her eyes full of triumph. Yes, my family. Ethan is mine, not yours. Not those 3 babies. Ethan clenched his hands, his knuckles white. He had never felt his blood boil like this. 9:01 p.m. Grace returned to the nursery, so tired that her steps were unsteady. She sat down on the floor, quietly pulling out the old photograph of Hannah from her pocket. Placing it in the palm of her hand, she whispered, Hannah, I'm exhausted, but I'll try one more day. I promised you. Ethan swallowed hard. On the screen, Grace placed a hand on her chest, then gently touched Liam's forehead. I know you never wanted this to happen. You only wanted your children to be loved, but Vanessa hates them. She hates me too. Grace wiped away tears. Then she quietly asked, If you were still here, what would you tell me to do? Ethan leaned back into the chair, whispering, Hannah would tell you to leave this place and take the 3 children with you. But Grace couldn't hear. She only hugged the photograph, as if holding a remaining piece of her deceased friend's memory. 9:40 p.m. Vanessa appeared again, this time holding a bottle of wine. Grace, heat up some food. I'm hungry. Grace, whose eyes were stinging with exhaustion, replied quietly, Vanessa, I haven't had dinner. Then eat later. Or quit now. But Vanessa stepped closer, her voice sharp as a knife. If you want to get paid this period, you'd better shut up and work. From the surveillance room, Ethan stood up abruptly. His entire body trembled with rage. Vanessa finished emphatically. And mark my words, tomorrow is the last day you step foot in this house. Whether Ethan knows it or not. Grace stood there, her eyes red, but she did not lower her head. She only said one sentence, small but determined. I'm not afraid of losing the job. I'm only afraid the 3 babies will lose a mother again. Vanessa paused, then gave a dry laugh. Mother? Don't fool yourself. She walked away. Grace stood silently in the darkness, clutching her chest as if holding onto the last bit of warmth. From behind the screen, Ethan whispered, his voice almost choked. Grace, you are not just Emma's mother. You're the mother of all 4. That night, Ethan didn't sleep. He sat waiting for the sunrise. Because tomorrow, the world would know who Vanessa Brooks truly was, and know that Grace Coleman deserved to stand in the place where true love should be most honored. That night, Houston was steeped in a deep purple hue, as if forewarning an unprecedented emotional storm. In a Ward mansion, the crystal chandeliers cast a cold, perfectly elegant, overly luxurious, and utterly fake light upon the dining table, given what was about to unfold. Vanessa Pierce paced around the 12-seat table, adjusting every crystal glass, every napkin edge, as if every detail were preparation for the greatest moment of her life. And she believed it absolutely. She believed Ethan Ward would propose to her tonight. She believed everything she had meticulously constructed would fall directly into her hands, like a destined gift reserved just for her. On the grand staircase, Ethan descended. His steps were slow, heavy, not those of a man preparing for dinner with family, but of a man entering an operating room where he was about to excise a silent yet dangerous tumor from his life. His face was devoid of expression. No anger, no sadness, no weakness. Only one thing, he was finished deciding. Vanessa immediately rushed to him, wrapping her arms around his neck, pressing her mouth close to his as if to stake her claim. I'm dying of excitement, she whispered, her voice sickeningly sweet. I know what you're going to say tonight. Ethan merely glanced at her for 1 second, a look utterly devoid of warmth, a look of finality. But Vanessa didn't see it. She was never perceptive enough to understand. Ethan's family arrived shortly after. Lorraine, the elegantly silver-haired woman, her face serene but her eyes sharp, capable of seeing through any facade. Dylan, Ethan's quiet, rational older brother, with the gaze of a man who had learned to read the world in silence. Harper, sharp-witted, not easily charmed, always wary of anyone trying to insert themselves into her family. Vanessa opened the door with the biggest smile she had ever worn. "Welcome, everyone. I'm so happy you could all make it tonight." Harper's eyes swept over Vanessa from head to toe, pausing at the sparkling white dress. "Ethan said there was an important announcement," she said, making no attempt to hide her suspicion. "So we came." Vanessa giggled. "That's right. Ethan will say it after dessert." Ethan sat down at the table, silent, as if his presence were a stone lodged in the heart of that otherwise perfect banquet. Throughout the meal, Vanessa chattered endlessly about her 3 days of sacrifice for the children. "I practically handled everything myself," she lamented, placing a hand on her chest like a stage actress. "Grace is, well, she's good, but kind of poor, unprofessional. I'm the one who carried the burden." Harper looked up. "You handled it? Alone?" Vanessa nodded, as if it were the most natural thing. "I'm the only one who truly understands what they need." Lorraine said nothing. She only watched, the look of a woman who had been a mother all her life and knew exactly who was telling the truth and who was fabricating a story. "Grace even brought her daughter without permission," Vanessa continued, her voice sweet as honey but full of malice. "I had to deal with that too." Harper glanced at Ethan. Her eyes asked one single question: "Is that true?" Ethan remained silent, but his silence was the storm gathering beneath the earth. When dessert was served, Vanessa stood up, raising her glass as if preparing to give a wedding speech. "Before Ethan makes his announcement, I just want to say a few words." She placed her hand on his chest, a perfectly orchestrated gesture for an engagement performance. "I know you've been under pressure because of the triplets, and I think perhaps it would be best to return them to the orphanage. That would be best for everyone." The air froze, as if plunged into a vacuum. Ethan stood up. His voice rang out like a knife, cutting through the space. "Enough." Vanessa faltered. Ethan looked at each member of his family. Finally, he looked straight at Vanessa. His gaze no longer held pain, no longer held doubt. Only truth. "You thought I didn't know what you've been doing for the past 3 days?" Vanessa gave a strained laugh. "Honey, I took care of—" "No." Ethan cut her off. "You abandoned the 3 babies for 8 hours straight. You let them cry until their voices were hoarse. You called them 3 red lumps of flesh. You tossed cold milk into their cribs and went to a bar." Harper gasped. Dylan frowned until his entire face hardened like stone. Lorraine slammed her hand on the table, no longer trying to hide her emotions. Vanessa stammered, "Ethan, how do you know?" Ethan didn't answer. He simply pulled a small remote control from his pocket and pressed the button. A large screen lit up. It showed the unexpected. Vanessa standing in front of the cribs, sighing as if being tortured. Her voice, "I hate this crying." Milk bottles being tossed into the cribs. The 3 babies crying until their voices were hoarse. Grace rushing in, picking up each baby, her voice choked. "Auntie Grace is here. I'm so sorry." Lorraine put her hand over her mouth, her eyes welling up. Harper was crying, right there at the dinner table. Ethan had never seen his sister like this. Dylan remained silent, but his hand was clenched into a tight fist. Vanessa screamed, "She's acting. She wants to steal my position." Ethan looked at her, his gaze utterly blank. No one has to act to love a child. He pressed another button. The video switched to Vanessa on a phone call. "I'll marry him, then divorce him, take half the assets. Those 3 kids are just an obstacle." The room fell into complete silence. Vanessa turned pale. "Ethan, let me explain. I was under pressure. No need," Ethan interrupted coldly. "I have one more thing to do." He walked toward the door, unlocking it. Outside, a figure stood with a curly-haired 6-year-old girl. Grace and Emma. Grace stepped in, her eyes bewildered as she looked around the lavish dining table, still not understanding why she had been invited. Vanessa howled like a madwoman. What is she doing here?" Ethan turned back. His voice wasn't loud, but it was bone-chillingly cold. "Because tonight, everyone needs to know who truly belongs to this family." No one in the room moved. No one breathed. No one blinked. Grace stood right in the doorway, clutching Emma's hand tightly, as if letting go would instantly awaken something terrible. The little girl clung to her mother's leg, her wide eyes looking up at the luxurious room that neither of them had ever been invited into. At least, not in this capacity. And in that moment of silence, Grace herself did not understand the reason that had brought her here. Except for one thing her heart whispered. Something very big was about to happen. Ethan was the one who broke the silence. "Come in, Grace." His voice was not a command, not a request. It was an invitation, solemn and clear, as if he had just called a loved one home. Grace stepped in with the gait of someone accustomed to being behind the scenes, who never thought she would step into the spotlight. She didn't demand. She didn't expect. She didn't try to capture anyone's attention. But precisely because of that, the entire room, except for Vanessa, looked toward her. Emma still clung to her mother's leg. Grace bent down, pulled her daughter closer, and whispered gently, "It's okay, darling. Mommy is here." Ethan looked at the mother and daughter, and for the first time in months, he recognized what he had always avoided naming: family. Not in retouched photos or perfect parties, but right here, in the form of a simple, small, yet incredibly strong woman that the whole world could not push down. Vanessa screamed as if thrust out of a dream. "Ethan, why is she here? This is your and MY family dinner." No one answered. No one looked at her. They all looked at Grace. Lorraine was the first to stand up. She walked closer, her gaze warm, gentle, the kind of look Grace never expected to receive from a stranger. "Are you Grace?" Grace nodded, stammering, "Yes. I apologize if I'm intruding." "No." Lorraine's hand settled on hers, steady and full of conviction. "You're not intruding. You should have been here from the start." Vanessa practically shrieked. "You can't take her side. She's just the help. A poor single mother trying to make herself important." Grace looked down at the floor, her shoulders trembling slightly. Ethan turned to Vanessa. His voice rang out, not loud, but sharp enough to slice the air like a blade. "Never call her that again." The room stopped. Ethan stepped forward, standing at the center of the dining table, where he had never stood to say anything important for many years. "Grace is not just the housekeeper," he said, every word clear. "She is the one who saved the 3 children from exhaustion, from harm, from neglect. She is the one who held them when they were too weak to cry anymore. She is the one who stayed up all night. She is the one who knows every bottle, every cough, every sign of distress." He turned to Vanessa. "And you went to a bar." Vanessa flushed, trying to force a smile. "You misunderstood. I just needed to rest. I was stressed." Ethan shook his head. "And while resting, you said you'd marry me, then divorce me for half my assets. You don't love me. You love what I have." Harper jumped up, throwing her napkin onto the table. "And you have the audacity to call Grace a poor person trying to make herself important? She's 100 times more important than you." Dylan spoke up, his voice low. "I never supported this relationship, but now I understand why." Vanessa looked around, panicked. "You've all been fooled by her. She's an actress. She wants to steal you from me. She wants the rich life that I deserve." Ethan sighed. "Grace never demanded anything from me. She could work 3 jobs simultaneously to raise her daughter, yet she stayed here. For the 3 babies. For the promise to Hannah. For a heart that doesn't know how to turn away." Grace paused when she heard that name. "Hannah?" Lorraine asked softly. Ethan nodded. Grace was Hannah's best friend, the last person Hannah trusted, the person Hannah chose to be by her children's side if she couldn't. The room was silent. Vanessa let out a wild laugh. "Wonderful. A touching story to dump me? Ethan, you..." "Vanessa." The single word cut off everything she was about to say. Ethan's voice was not cold, not angry, just final. "You leave my house tonight. We are done. If you ever bother the 3 children again, I will pursue legal action to the full extent." Vanessa froze. Someone who had never been rejected was now cast aside, right in front of the family she thought she had conquered. Ethan turned away, leaving her standing there, silent, empty. He walked toward Grace, bending down at her eye level. "Grace," his voice softened. Thank you. For the 3 children. For me. Grace shook her head quickly, her voice trembling. I only did the right thing. I don't expect. Ethan gently squeezed her hand. No one could have done what you did without a heart stronger than my entire family combined. Emma looked at her mother, looked at Ethan, then looked at the 3 babies in the cribs. She smiled, the innocent smile of a child who knew that her mother had truly been seen. Lorraine lightly touched Grace's shoulder. If the 3 children are to have another mother, I want it to be you. Grace started to cry. Ethan didn't wait. He picked up Liam, placing him in Grace's arms. They don't need a nanny. His voice was choked. They need a family. Grace held the baby to her chest, an embrace that fit perfectly, as if the baby was born to be there. Ethan looked at Emma. Emma, would you like to live close to these 3 siblings? Emma nodded. Yes, please. Grace was both laughing and crying, unsure where to begin to grasp everything that was happening. Ethan looked straight into her eyes. Then don't leave. Grace paused. Ethan, are you saying? He nodded. Stay. Not for the job, but because we need you. And if you'll let me, I need you too. Grace's smile was shaky, but something glowed, softly, brilliantly. A light she had never seen in her life. Behind them, Vanessa Pierce still stood, silent. And for the first time, no one cared about her anymore. Ethan's family gathered around Grace, Emma, and the 3 babies. Vanessa turned, retreating. No sound. In the atmosphere, warm enough to melt away all the lonely days, Ethan spoke, his voice loud enough for all to hear. Tonight, this family has made its choice. Grace looked at the children, looked at her daughter, and looked at the man she once thought could never be part of her life. She knew that, for the first time in her life, a door had opened, not because of pity, but because of true love.